works are like food or something. So there is a particular, you can make it in the right moment, and you cannot make it before and you cannot make it after. They have their window. I think art is really interesting because it goes way, way back. You can consume it relatively fast. You can look at it. You don't have to read like a whole novel to, or you can kind of get a fast impression of things. You can make it faster than write a novel. And also what one realized, or what I realize more and more, is the different circumstances in which art was made. So the different meanings it must have had, which we can only assume what it is, but from very public things to spiritual things to individual expression. It's very interesting, and you don't really choose in what time you're active. So if you think that one thing I always have to think about, and actually, funny enough, with the Place Vendôme and Courbet, then having to go to Switzerland in exile and dying there because he cannot pay to re-erect the column. That's probably from the first generation of if you. I mean, this instance is very interesting because he goes against the organized power, because there is a way of how you can be an individual more as an artist, and it's the beginning of the liberated hand, where you can make something the way you want to do it. And in the beginning, that looks still not much different than what was done before. Maybe a little differences which we now maybe see, but they wouldn't bother us, and at the time were maybe scandalous. You are a little looser with your brush, and like, oh my God, But that was a big topic. And from there on, the hands gets freer and what you do, and then we come into all the in 19th century, 20th century art. And I grew up in this belief, by now that's maybe kind of almost antiquated, but I like this idea of you express yourself with whatever, however you want, and there is a freedom in this, I don't know if it always shifts, but I think that's like whatever we see, like we are now in this gallery, whatever we see from this Katie Nolan to this Cy Twombly to, they all come from this idea that it's you who can do this thing. And what I love about art history, it was not always like that, or there is folk art, or where it is very much like that. So I like of it. When you're young, you like just to be every thought the same, not be the same, to feel new. You want to explore. So you don't like to have a conversation you had before. It's you think that's terrible, out the way, And then some themes in your life, some interests, some patterns start to occur, And as I don't like to have an identity, really, in some way, or I don't. That's a strange phrasing, but I'm not. I don't like the idea of having a particular identity, or never had. And in that, I also like to just, I like new things, different things. Logically, that's the identity is that I don't like to have one. And in that, the constant escape from everything becomes its own pattern. And in that, there are, over a sudden, reoccurring interests, and sometimes they are, you just start to see the pattern as the pattern unfolds. You don't see the pattern when you start. And sometimes I see photos when I was 16, just and I see not what I made out of it later, but like there is a particular interest or like a way of seeing something that's like it's inherent. So you kind of got on some point. I still try to expand as much as I like revisiting things that I'm working on, and for some works I understand better 10 years after I think of it how to solve it. So they're not works are like food or something. So there is a particular, you can make it in the right moment, and you cannot make it before and you cannot make it after. They have their window, and they also have the window of how they connect. I mean, that's a bad with the food analogy. You don't want to eat 50-year-old food, but maybe wine. but if they don't connect in the time, I think it's very hard for a work to ever connect. If we look at, let's say, and we sit here in this gallery, if this Katie Nolan was made now, I don't think it would have the same impact. If he would paint a Courbet painting now, no. But so it connects in its time. So it's like food. It's made, then it connects, and then maybe that kind of cuisine can continue and still be of interest, even though it has a different, its relevance is less in its connection to the now, but in its relevance is in its own. So it's like it starts to resonate within the space it is in and within itself. So in that way, I think the longer you work, back to what I said pretty much in the beginning, I never wanted to be an artist. I think to me, artists still are these people that worked all their life, and then what they made during all their life starts to resonate on a bigger scale. I mean, like, I like David Hockney, for example. I'm not a giant fan, like in obsessive, but I always liked this figure. When I went to school, there was one teacher. I said, "Oh, I like this." I bought this book, Camera Works, which came out, I think, in '89, of all the Polaroids and other things glued together. And I really liked that. And I had this visiting artist, professor-y guy, whatever. So, oh, that's like advertisement. You're like, oh, so what? What's the problem with that? You know, you try to. It's seductive. So what? Which was a not a viable way or reason to make art for this person at that time. But if you look at this artist's life and all these different interests and how they accumulate into a knowledge, into a universe of itself, it's, to me, that's why I am a believer in art, that it is a very intimate way, however public in parts, it's a very intimate way of recording the experience of existing. You could say life, but it's more like there's an existential component to it, you know, or not. There's an existential experience in some form. And that all of this comes together as one, and then that travels through time. I love that, you know, like I really love that.